My forecast is Bitcoin goes up 40%, then 35, then 30, then 25, then 20. And like 10 to 20 years out, it's clipping along at 20. And then over the course of 100 years, it's growing 14% a year. And against that, the S&P index will probably grow 7% a year. The money supply will grow 7% a year. So if you diversify in the S&P index, you're just going to maintain your wealth, track the money supply if you get lucky. And Bitcoin's going to outperform that.
Today we have Microstrategies' Michael Saylor giving us his prediction on the price action and market dynamics for Bitcoin, and when we'll see a 40% increase in value. Saylor's positive sentiment is firmly rooted in two key factors: the upcoming Bitcoin halving event set for April, and the impending approval of a Bitcoin spot ETF by the US Securities and Exchange Commission. Currently, the SEC is actively reviewing multiple applications for this ETF. Thanks to BlackRock's significant influence, there's an increasingly strong belief that, in the not-too-distant future, we'll witness the approval of at least one Bitcoin spot ETF. This would mark an historic milestone for the Bitcoin community, a moment many have been eagerly awaiting for well over a decade. The green light for such an ETF would carry profound implications for the world of cryptocurrency and would serve as the gateway to substantial institutional investments, drawing interest from sovereign wealth funds, major corporations, and even governments. Saylor envisions that this development will pave the way for large corporations to incorporate cryptocurrencies into their balance sheets. Let's get right into the latest interview with Michael Saylor and why Bitcoin is poised to revolutionize 2023 and the imminent transformations we can anticipate in the crypto market.
Well, I think in the fall of 2020, I disclosed that I had acquired 17,732 Bitcoin, and I haven't sold any. You don't sell your Bitcoin. And then Microstrategy, in its latest quarterly release, announced that it had now reached 158,400 Bitcoin. So we have just been consistently acquiring more Bitcoin, and we've, done it through a dozen or more different transactions, cash buys, debt issuances, equity issuances, etc. So generally, you could say that I'm long Bitcoin. I think MicroStrategy is getting close to having invested $4.7 billion of cash, of real money in Bitcoin, just slightly less, something like that. I bought the 17,732 Bitcoin, back when it was about below 10,000. So I probably invested $175 million of cash. Obviously, we're long-term, so it doesn't really matter what you spent to buy it. It matters more about how many Bitcoin you have and whether you're still holding the Bitcoin when Bitcoin hits $1 million a coin or 10 million a coin. I don't think it's very wise to sell Bitcoin. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, and so Bitcoin maximalist means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but certainly what it means from an investor point of view is I view Bitcoin as the apex asset. So MicroStrategy is a public company. Our strategy is literally to acquire more Bitcoin. Our strategy is not to trade. Our strategy is not diversified investments in a portfolio of technology companies. Our strategy is very simple. We're a levered long Bitcoin operating company. So if you think about us, comparing us to like a spot Bitcoin ETF, a spot Bitcoin ETF would only own Bitcoin, but it would be unlevered and it would charge you a fee. And our strategy is we use intelligent leverage. For example, we borrowed $2.2 billion at 1.6% interest blended. So we have very intelligent leverage, long-term, not mark-to-market. And then we buy Bitcoin with it, and then we don't charge a fee. And we generate a premium because when we generate cash flows or we do accretive financings, we then convert that into Bitcoin for the benefit of our shareholders. So MicroStrategy, the public company, we have a transparent strategy. And the key with a public company is when you adopt a strategy, you need to be consistent. You need to be transparent. Like, for example, If I created a REIT that invested in premium office space in New York and London, and I raised capital for that, you would want me to invest in premium office space in New York and London. And if I said, oh yeah, the market is, I got the point where I'm going to sell that and buy Kansas City farmland, and now I'm going to trade some digital assets or whatever, you would think, I can't really trust this company because I don't know what they're going to do. And if I don't know what they're going to do, then I don't want to invest my capital with them. So it's very important for a public company to have a strategy, to be understandable, and to be consistent in that strategy and transparent. So Microstrategies' strategy is acquire and hold Bitcoin. By any means accretive. By accretive, it means, when you get done with the transaction, you want your public company shareholders to feel like they have more Bitcoin per share, or they have accreted their Bitcoin holdings and not diluted their Bitcoin holdings.
Saylor asserts this journey is just beginning, comparing the initial years to the current widespread interest and investment, with a giant spotlight on Bitcoin ETFs. Saylor highlights this being a significant development in the financial ecosystem in obtaining regulatory approval for a Bitcoin ETF. This move, he contends, will underscore Bitcoin's enduring relevance as an asset, leading up to the highly anticipated 2024 halving event for Bitcoin.
And with regard to myself, I'm long Bitcoin, man. like everybody else, I'm wishing I had bought more Bitcoin when it was 9,500 a Bitcoin, right? It's, ultimately, it's the best thing you can do. Let's talk about performance, though. For example, since MicroStrategy bought Bitcoin, we entered the market August 10th, 2020. And so what's happened to all these asset classes when you think about diversification? Well, between August 10th and October 31st, when we published our results on our quarterly result with MicroStrategy, then Bitcoin was up 192%. And that works out to a compounded annual growth rate of more than 40%. And the S&P is up 25%. Mm-hmm. And the NASDAQ's up 17%. Gold lost 1%. Silver lost 18%. Bonds lost 24%. So in terms of asset classes, Bitcoin is outrunning all of the other conventional asset classes. And if you invested in anything other than maybe Magnificent Seven, you're just not keeping up with inflation. But the Magnificent Seven stocks, if you look at them, while Bitcoin was up 192%, Google was up 68%. Microsoft was up 62%. Apple was up 51%. Meta Group was up 15%. Netflix lost 15%. Amazon lost 15%. So big tech doesn't look like such a good diversification versus Bitcoin. And, so how'd MicroStrategy do? Well, MicroStrategy was up 242%. So we actually outperformed Bitcoin. Why? Because we're levered long Bitcoin, right? We used intelligent leverage. We borrowed money to buy more Bitcoin. We didn't just put our assets into Bitcoin. We found a way to borrow $1 billion at 0% interest and buy Bitcoin, right? So if you can do that, I highly recommend you do that. The caveat being, you can't borrow the money at 0% interest if it's a margin loan, because you might get wiped out on Saturday night while you're sleeping. It can't be a mark to market. It needs to be like a 7-year, 9-year, 5-year term loan that isn't mark to market for that to be intelligent leverage. You want to diversify, I would say, anybody that said, I like Bitcoin, but I got to be diversified, I say, okay, fine. Buy a portfolio of scarce desirable assets that you want to hold for the next 30 years. And it has to pass, the Bernard Arnault test. It has to be something that a person richer than you and more sophisticated than you and more cultured than you and smarter than you will want to buy from you in a decade. And if you come up with that thing, maybe it's a Leonardo da Vinci painting, or maybe it's professional sports team, the Patriots, maybe it's maybe it's the middle of London. But I would say this is you could buy the best companies in the world and the best real estate in the world. It's still going to underperform Bitcoin for a lot of reasons we could talk about. So, if you made a lot of money, Bitcoin 10Xs or 100Xs, and you made a lot of money and you want to be diversified, then you buy scarce desirable properties, but you'll underperform. If you, if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you just realize the cost of capital is Bitcoin's going up 40% a year. The cost of capital is 40%. That means anything that you invest in has to yield that, which is kind of the risk-free cost of capital for a Bitcoin maximalist, plus the risk premium.
Michael Saylor may have a bold price prediction of $100,000 and then on to $1 million. But he's not the only one that shares this sentiment. Max Kaiser and Cathie Wood all predict Bitcoin's price going from 6 figures next year and then on to hit 7 figures within the next 5 years. The halving is a key milestone for Bitcoin, as its price has historically multiplied times 10 every 4 years. We'll be keeping an eye on Bitcoin's price in the coming months, as 2024 is right around the corner. What do you think about Michael Saylor's price prediction for Bitcoin, and where crypto is headed in the last part of the year? Comment down below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.